Hey there, friends. I want to put out a really quick video. I know most of you already heard about the bump stock ban that has been struck down by, proudly enough, the Fifth Circuit Court down here in Louisiana. Real proud of that. They aren't usually known for doing stuff that we approve of when it comes to firearms. A little bit of really quick backstory on this. The Supreme Court had originally decided not to hear this. Now, in many cases, the Supreme Court won't agree to hear something that makes it to that point if all of the lower courts, the circuit courts below them, all kind of are in the same agreement. They typically won't take something on. It's usually the Supreme Court will get involved whenever there's a disagreement in the circuit courts. That's typically when you'll see things get elevated to the Supreme Court. Well, a few circuit courts actually upheld the ban, and it wasn't until it got to the Fifth Circuit, when the Fifth Circuit actually upheld the ban, until they agreed as the entire panel of judges to hear it, which is when they struck it down. Now, the interesting thing in all this was the judges were extremely lengthy in their write-up about this. In fact, they were extremely specific and very detailed in their write-up. In their write-up, they excoriated the ATF and kind of with a backhanded slap at Congress. More on that here in a second. They pretty much got on the ATF about you're a regulatory agency. You are not a lawmaking agency. You simply can make rules. If you'll remember, the ATF has been making rules and was wanting to make one implemented in this case with criminal penalties that actually were associated with breaking the quote rule regarding bump stocks. And let's as a side note, remember that we have a very similar stabilizing brace issue that will directly be impacted by this, where they again wanted to assign criminal penalties and even prison time to you breaking their quote rule. Let's remember, the ATF cannot make laws. Only Congress can make laws. So by law, the ATF cannot pass a rule that has prison and criminal penalties tied to it, because that would be breaking a law, not a rule. The reason why this is so important is because this is the same thing that we've all been saying. The ATF cannot make laws. They cannot make a rule that puts you in jail if you break it. And this court is doing the smart thing by telling Congress, in so many words, you need to do your job. We've been telling Congress, this is your job. Congress is essentially a bunch of cowards. They have shunned their responsibilities time and time again, not just with bump stocks, but as it relates to guns in general. Quick little side note, let's not forget that Donald Trump is who wanted this bump stock ban to be put in place. This bump stock ban probably would not have been pushed so quickly and so forcefully through without the encouragement of Donald Trump after the Las Vegas shooting. And that's where I go back to Congress being cowards. These people have not wanted to touch hot topic items and hot button items for a very long time as associated with firearms, simply because they fear being boosted out of their seats more than anything else in the world. And they want to sit on that fence and they want to act like, oh, we're doing something. And then they want to still coddle and cozy up to all these Second Amendment people. And they can't do that if they're passing laws that are, quote, banning bump stocks. So that's why they kicked this to the ATF. And what's interesting about this case more than anything to me is the very fact that this court is saying Congress needs to do its own job. Now, where does it go from here? It's very possible this could make it back to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court at this point likely would hear this simply because there's some confusion and some disagreement at the circuit court levels down below them. Will Merrick Garland actually appeal this so that it goes to the Supreme Court? Who knows? Because let's not forget, Merrick Garland could let this go. Now, Merrick Garland's a complete failure, but he could let this go and just let it be what it is, or he could press the issue appealing it, which when it goes Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court rules in favor of us, the gun community, then that is a Supreme Court ruling very similar to Bruin that affects the entire country, and it has way more weight than just Merrick Garland letting this go at the circuit court level. I know there's a lot more to it than just that, but I'm just saying Merrick Garland may have to make a calculated decision on whether or not he wants to take this to the Supreme Court and risk losing it at that level. So this is a big thing. I think it has major ripple effects across the entire country. across so many things that the ATF is trying to overstep right now. And again, I have to repeat, including that stabilizer brace issue. Remember, the stabilizer brace issue was originally supposed to be done earlier last year. Then they pushed it to December. Now they've pushed it to this month in January 2023. And it's very likely this is why they're doing that, because they see what's happening here and they may need to pump the brakes on what they're trying to do now. Because again, let's remind ourselves, the ATF cannot make a rule that's punishable by prison and monetary fines that has some kind of a penal implication to it. Unfortunately, they're trying to do that, and they have been doing that, and this court has pretty much told them, you can't do that, and we're not going to let you do that.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. He's